Having owned the black wheelbarrow long enough to know that 100% of the time the tire is going to be flat when I go to fetch it, I went with the punctureless solid rubber option to serve my hauling needs for the remaining life of the wheelbarrow. I got it at Lowe's because I was told that the Home Depot supports the re-election of Trump to the tune of millions. And after buying the tire, a meme reminded me to shop at Lowe's because the orange store supports the orange president and the blue store supports, well, not him. I felt the way that lab mice must feel when they reach the end of the maze after a string of sleepless nights. But when the feeling vanished, it was gone, and I set out to change the tire. Straight jaw, tongue and groove, channel lock pliers was all the job took. You ever smile and say, fine, when a friend asks how you're doing, and then they pry a little bit deeper to see what's going on inside? You see, I found out that the Home Depot retired its Trump-supporting board chair, Bernie Marcus, almost 2 decades ago, and that the orange store vocally doesn't support the orange president. And here I was thinking I'd achieved some version of moral equilibrium, but I was wrong. There was a letter on justice and open debate that appeared in Harper's Magazine, signed by like 150 writers who have that kind of brand recognition that writers like me appreciate. But then Twitter found out, and boy, was it pissed. I've never heard the war drums start up in earnest, but I imagine that's what it sounded like in the mind of the social media horde as they considered link, meme, or GIF. Life is all about choices. Thank God nobody reads beyond the titles anymore. I think we can still be civil. But yes, how many readers of poetry, show of hands, actually own a wheelbarrow? Or chickens, for that matter. I own 1 black wheelbarrow and 6 chickens. One of the chickens is a white leghorn. Her name is Happy. Do you remember Foghorn Leghorn? I do. Sweet Jesus, he was a big chicken. And probably an outlet for the creator's racist tendencies and simultaneous contempt for the Confederacy. I've been told by people born into strong accents how important it is to lose the accent in order to be successful in academia. Gardening is okay work. But I wonder if there's a limit to how many power tools one can own and still be a reasonably well-received professor. I know I've exceeded my limit. My $600 DeWalt compound miter saw makes me want to own a truck. I'm thinking Toyota Tacomas, but I've got a good history with Toyotas, so I must admit I'm a bit biased. I actually got the wheelbarrow tire for my wife, who was going to haul the rest of the firewood from the front yard to the wood pile out back next to the shed. But we stayed up late into the night talking about the fucked up soul of our nation, of all nations, how human history seems like one big contest to see which form of torture is the cruelest. There is nothing new under the sun. And go figure, this morning, we don't feel like moving wood. We're suffering, depressed, and generally blue. I was reading Dwayne Betts' book, Felon, before I started this poem. I was reading his poem, Confession, before I started this one. Antecedent could be either poem or confession. But I feel like I've gone somewhere different. I think that's worth mentioning, that we need not depart with an arrival in mind as we sift our way through the language, but being as I'm a human and not just a collection of words hustling to get in line every time the reader flips the light switch on the wall, I should confess to you that I'm still grieving the death of my mentor, a poet who worked to be counted among the greats to hail from the state of New Jersey. I didn't remember the grief until this moment in the poem. You see, he never wrote about a wheelbarrow that I know of, but if he had, he'd have made it clear that the wheelbarrow is just a vessel that we're meant to fill and guide and ultimately empty. It may make the work a little bit easier, and it may make the load seem a little bit lighter, but the work is still just work, waiting to be done. In other news, this girl at my daughter's school said her family lives in a mansion. And guess what? Now my daughter says so too. As we cut through the rich side of town and drive past homes with tennis courts and heated stony grottos that waterfall down into mosaic tiled pools, inspired by the ones in Santorini, no doubt, and statues of angels that rise from the center of those pools and blast trumpets, water tumbling down like a musical note only the wealthy can hear. Her family must be blessed, I say, even though I know the girl lives in Shrewsbury, where there are no mansions to speak of, only bad debt and potholes and troubled parishes and racism, and yet our house, which is not in Shrewsbury, must seem tinier each day to my daughter. She's not old enough yet to be embarrassed by the clawfoot tub and moldy vanity and giant hunk of underlayment and linoleum I ripped out from the bathroom, set on the porch because of mold, smelled it like another emergency loan from the credit union. Thank God we had a deep enough porch to store the junk while we figured out how to finance the job with me providing the labor, and it's a wonder I'm still not drinking. I'm telling you that our bathroom has decorated our front porch since February, and it's spring. And Cora is getting older by the minute and must see porches that aren't warped and leaning and weeping the contents of the house. I'm trying to say that I'm writing this poem and contemplating a tub in front of me that's turned on its side like one of those sad whales that's washed up on the beach with 50 pounds of plastic in their bellies. I'm trying to tell you that I wear a sports jacket to work because I've worn through the elbows on my dress shirts. People at work think I'm putting on airs, but I'm actually just cheap and desperate for something in my life not to wear out. The jacket was my father's, and each time I slide it on, I feel him, but how the fuck did we end up talking about me? Let's get back to the mansion my house is not, and the daughter growing taller and wiser by the minute, and the truck I'll need to borrow to get that tub off my front porch, while the bathroom is in disrepair and the crocuses have come and gone, and soon enough the daffodils and the naked ladies and the mulberries and the blackberries. And when I was young, there was a moment when I thought money was the salve one spreads on the wound of poverty. So my friend and I drove up to a mansion we admired in the middle of the day to knock on the door and ask the owner what they did for a living. Nobody answered. Middle of the day, the two of us were skipping school to get high and trespass. Maybe there's a lesson that I'm missing that's buried somewhere in these words, and I should probably just try and remember how to pray or go read the Bible. But a freight train is cutting through this two-sided town, and the porch is vibrating underfoot, and the train is so loud, I'd be foolish not to hear it. But trains, thank God, are not expressions of benevolence. Trains are fixed and heavy and always lurching through towns like a caravan of wheeled elephants atop the Silk Road of post-industrial America. Look at all the empty space out there. The flat plains and the high deserts full of rabbits and leafy tendrils of interstate pilgrims bound for their respective gracelands. Goodwill remains a soft skill, though, not transportable, not a commodity like butane or cyclohexane, which both must be as useful as they are combustible. And of course, the train cars lope, like businessmen and women and persons counting down the days till retirement with a black Sharpie, sniffing the black tip before putting it away. Another X. Another night in the townless wonder of neither here nor there. There is a schedule that trains are always keeping ahead of, even if that's hard for us to imagine. And humans are still in there too, still at the engine's yellow helm. If you live near the tracks, you could be like me and dig up the occasional railroad spikes, rusted and flecking to crumbles, for the betterment of what? The trains at the crossing in this Oldsmobile of a poem pass before us like a museum, full of graffiti, the panicked etchings of youth. They pass before our eyes like sonnets of cat and mouse flashlight games in the darkest parts of less valued parts of cities. The yards of trains are where tracks breed in twilight and wend into and out of one another with cosmic radiance like a Russian ballet company. In full disclosure, it's 2020. And there's Amtrak Joe from Scranton, who seems to possess some version of childhood innocence mixed with the anger of grief, which is a combination that seems like an old-timey tonic meant to help one sleep, only not very soundly. He should have retired, all things considered. But it's 5 days after the election, and we don't yet have a president. And my wife and I are plotting our escape from this country should our democracy collapse like meringue. Regina and I stay up late comparing strategies. Pistols, holsters, passports, cash, emergency packs already in the cars, west or east or north, depending on the prevailing winds and fallout. Will Canada even let us in? Will coal still be driven from its mountainy slumber to be busted and loaded in the cars to keep the lights of houses flicking on? Will produce still be stacked upon the grocery displays, apples like red pyramids and cheeses sliced from wheels which are not the wheels of trains, driving from one place to another, sharp enough to cut a human in half if one gets tired and lays a body down upon the tracks, closes one's eyes, and hopes to be delivered early, like a package from Amazon arriving on a Tuesday because Bezos is the closest thing we have to a baron. The trains are always moving at any moment of the day or night, and there is comfort in that motion. Think of that device with the little metallic balls swinging and clacking atop the oak of your therapist's desk. The device has a name, just like you have a name. Isn't that wonderful? The energy locked in the pendulum's efficient swing, so little goes to waste, so little goes unnoticed. Your therapist in this poem is actually my therapist. And her voice draws you down deeper into yourself until you're finally submerged. Why are you anxious? She asks. What is this formidable ennui? To which I say, I'm awake again. What the fuck more do you want from me? I'm too domesticated, too ritualized, too gutted, too after the fact and homely. I see the open yawp of my dishwasher and think the greens blended into my morning smoothie means that I'm on some fad or cancer diet. Diet of the failing state that follows home the failed statesman to his failing home with its failing cinder block foundation that inspires the crescendo of his failing marriage. No, that's wrong. It's too early in this poem for abstraction or politics. What trust have I built? Let's try this. It seems obvious, to me at least, that one can only have one love, or two at most, but neither of those loves should be for one's own house shoes, because comfort is simply boredom taking root. How deep can one delve into a singular thought before that thought dissolves like sugar into batter or explodes into a supernova, which is enlightenment? But this sentence is a question. Where did I go wrong in life? Where did I go right? You can't compromise without promise. But what if you have your fingers crossed behind your back in the old schoolyard style? My generation is the one that traded in the rocket pack of youth for the hum of the leaf blower blowing in the distance, the exact same spot between the hours of 8 a.m. and 9 a.m. every morning. Am I the only one who looks at their 401k and thinks it's time to retire the idea of retirement? There are no green pastures out there for poets like myself. There's no anchor that can't be weighed in the middle of the night whilst I sleep below deck. I can swim, but I'm terrified of water, and open water the most. I mean, I just had to double check the definition of sexton to be sure that I used it right in the poem, and then I deleted the line altogether because I don't trust extended metaphor. Who would? They're like lies compounding interest when I don't have enough for the monthly minimum due. Falling asleep last night, my wife asked me why I haven't written about the protests, fascists, environmental crisis, etc. And I went on rubbing her back to get the knots out, woke up to a cup of coffee, let the chickens out from the coop, and then sat down on the porch to write this poem. You tell me, what else should I have done? What else would you have done? What does anger beget the alcoholic trying to stay clean amidst the pandemic? I've learned that it may be better to simply understand oneself before the end comes. To understand the blue shell of the robin's egg means both life and death. To understand and to listen when my neighbor leans on the fence post to confess that his daughter was just diagnosed with throat cancer. Sometimes when I rub my wife's back as night drifts off into that familiar black, it's not enough to help her fall asleep. She asks me to tell her a story, and I try. I say, here is the orchard someone else will tend to. And here is the crawl space where someone else's barn cat will slumber through the summer nights, dreaming of long-tailed mice in the high grass. Over that field, I say, light dips and refracts through the broken glass of a muck pond where a catfish will take someone else's bait, that it might meet the refined heat of the skillet. The ghosts of 1,000 head of cattle walk through the woods at night in someone else's dream, while the windows crack slightly, let a mild breeze pass through the empty rooms like an appraiser. There is no death that can't be undone by simply turning the compost with the pitchfork or scattering scratch in the dirt for chickens who sing each time they lay. But every repair is just a gesture against the torment of slow winds and steady rains and heavy sun. It will be someone else who grows too old to climb the ladder into the barn's cool loft, or the flight of stairs that leads to and from their own bed. It will be someone else's hand weighing the mortgage. It will be someone else's face forgetting its smile. I tell my wife, listen, if the well pump kicks to life at dawn, it will be someone else drawing a bath for the last time, joints relaxing as their form submerges, body both recovering and failing in the same held breath. Thank you.